Let me segue with that into, you mentioned the budget shortfall, the projected shortfall. What do you think is the biggest issue facing the state for the next 2 years
Well,
and beyond, I guess I should say.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, Andrew, here's the thing. Last year we collected $30 billion in revenues. If we do nothing, if we don't raise taxes, if we don't do anything else, this year we'll collect $33 billion in revenues. And so it's not that we don't have money in this state. We do. We have plenty of money in this state. The problem is we're not spending it like we should be spending it. What you're seeing right now is a legislature who wants to spend $41 billion as opposed to the $33 billion that they already have. Now, you know as well as I do that if you've got $1,000 in the bank, you're not going to go write a check for $1,500. You know that there's consequences to that. You shouldn't do that. It's not right. It's not something that normal people do on an everyday basis. And so you see a situation here where our legislature does it all the time, and it's awfully convenient to have that money tree in the backyard that can go and shake. But I'm going to tell you right now, Andrew, I'm sick of being shaken down for money. I'm sick of watching my friends and neighbors being shook down for money. And I think that rather than try to find a revenue solution, we should focus more on a spending solution. The problem is not that we don't have enough money. It's the fact that we just spend more money than we have, and that's just irresponsible.
Yeah. Speaking in the spending, jobs and taxes are issues that I think are going to be big ones coming this year. We all on our side agree taxes are too high. We don't need more revenue. What are the types of taxes that we can reduce that'll create the jobs, that'll get the economy to boom? I mean, what would you hit first, when you get there in January? What do you really want to start with on a tax basis?
Well, when you de-incentivize business, you'll find that business has no incentive to create jobs. They have no incentive to grow. They have no incentive to do all of those things that make our economy so successful. And so what you've seen in Minnesota is the fourth highest taxed state for business in the world, not just the United States of America, but in the world.
That's all? We're only fourth?
Only fourth. But I think what you're seeing is investment capital will flow to its highest point of return. And anytime a business has an opportunity to locate some manufacturing facilities in Minnesota as opposed to another state that might have a friendlier tax posture, I think you're seeing a lot of businesses make that decision to go out of state. And so that's why you've been seeing a lot of the businesses leave the state in droves. And I listen to Mark Dayton, Democrat candidate for governor, and he's talking about why we're going to make those rich people pay their fair share. Well, what happens when you increase taxes on any group of people is the disposable income goes down. And one of the simple economic lessons that we've seen in this recession is the more you tax people, the less they're going to spend. They don't stop saving. They don't stop doing those things that are going to serve them well later in life. They stop spending. And so with an economic outlook that's a little bit suspect here going into the next 2011, 2012, not only on the federal side, but also the state side, there's still a lot of things that are up in the air right now. So you're seeing a lot of business owners who simply aren't willing to take the risk and start creating some jobs because it's not economically responsible of them to do so. I wouldn't create a job today if I knew that I wasn't going to be able to provide it tomorrow. It's just that's not the right thing to do. And so what we need to do is we need to offer some incentives for business owners so that they can start looking at those growth factors again, start creating those jobs that we need that will spur our economy. You're not collecting any tax revenues from someone if they're in the unemployment line. So it just doesn't work that way. So in order to spur our economic recovery, what we really need to do is focus on creating those jobs. And in order to create those jobs, we have to incentivize it for the people that do so. And that's basically the biggest thing that I would work on.
So would that be, would you look at income taxes, the corporate tax, which is very high here in Minnesota, especially compared to our neighboring states? I mean, those taxes need to be reduced?
Well, I think it's interesting when you start talking about the difference between corporate tax and income tax. A lot of Democrats will tell you, hey, corporations don't pay taxes anyway. Well, no, they pass the tax along to the consumer, so it's a regressive tax on income yet again. But what I think you'll find is that at some point businesses will reach that price point where they can't continue to pass that tax along, and as a result they're making the decision to move their facilities out of state, and or in some cases even move them offshore to a different country. So not only that, but you talk about the difference between income tax and corporate tax. Well, a lot of small businesses are LLCs or similar structures, and their ownership directly impacts the personal finances of the owner. And so if the business is doing well, that owner takes it in income taxes on his personal income taxes as well. And so it all ties in together. I mean, it's a system that has been broken for some time now, and we just haven't had an opportunity to really take a good look at it and see what might work a little bit better. Because every time you talk about lowering the tax rate, you hear howls about how, oh my gosh, we can't, cut these programs or cut this or cut that. Look, as I said before, we've got plenty of revenue. We just need to learn how to spend it better.
Yeah, and it's just to lose TCF, Twin Cities Federal has now left the state. I remember when 3M, Target, Honeywell were the engines of our economy, and now it's the government in Minnesota is the largest employer. And you look at states like California, Michigan, New York, you'll find similar things where it's the public sector being taken care of and the private sector is just feeding the beast. So
and you need to remember that government doesn't create wealth. Only private enterprise creates wealth. And so you enter into a situation now where we're seeing a lot more growth in government even during a recession. By the way, that is the only thing that grows in a recession is government spending. So you're seeing a lot of that right now, and they've become the largest employer in Minnesota. They don't create any wealth. All they do is redistribute wealth. And the reason that they do that is because they derive their income from the taxpayer. Where does the taxpayer derive their income from? They derive it from private companies, from private enterprise, which creates wealth. So if you remember that that's the equation and that's the simple economic theory that's behind all this, you'll know it doesn't do any good to create more government jobs because you're always going to end up with just as many in the unemployment line as a result.
Yeah.